Want to know why? Ask how. Howard the Humongous. We all know what happened Saturday, or we think we know. Gaza fired what it said were 5,000 rockets at civilian targets in Israel. And Hamas fighters infiltrated Israel using a massive bulldozer to tear a hole in the smart fence draped with razor wire that separates Gaza from southern Israel. Over 1,500 invaders streamed through. Some of them crossed the barrier on engine-powered paragliders, some on motorcycles, some in vehicles disguised as Israeli police cars. These infiltrators then entered 22 small Israeli communities and went methodically from home to home, butchering the fathers, mothers, and children inside, in some cases raping the women, in others burning their victims alive, and yet others blowing families up with grenades. And according to one report, beheading 40 babies on just one kibbutz, not to mention raping and killing 260 Israelis at a peace concert. The West was horrified by these war crimes. One survivor said that the Hamas infiltrators seemed to derive joy from the butchery. They were smiling as they fired grenades and bullets. What few understood is that these barbarities are the sort of methods that Muhammad himself, the founder of Islam, the man who liked to call himself the prophet of war, demanded. Muhammad said, "You must not take hostages until you have made great slaughter in the land." And one member of an al-Qaeda front group just before 9/11 said, "Allah told us of the certainty of the annihilation of the infidels by means of the Muslim group, which would, in accordance with the Islamic commandment, torture them." The question now on the agenda is, how is the torture Allah wants done at our hands to be carried out? Yes, Muhammad called not just for mass murder, he called for torture. Muhammad's goal was terror. As ISIS online magazine Dabiq put it, Allah has set his followers the task of terrorizing, massacring, and humiliating the enemies of Allah. ISIS adds about Islam's mass murderers, these killers are youths who divorced the world, who went to their enemy seeking to be killed in the cause of Allah. In the invasion of Israel, 1,500 of these Hamas killers were themselves killed. Muhammad decreed that those who die killing unbelievers are martyrs. They get an express ticket to paradise, complete with the 72 virgins you've heard about. They're heroes. But Muhammad was also generous to those who lived. The 8th chapter of the Quran is about how to divide up the loot of war, including the women, who become your sex slaves. In the last few days, you may have seen the video of a Hamas fighter in the back of a pickup truck parading a captured Israeli woman through the streets of Gaza and putting a scarf on her head. That scarf meant he was claiming her as his sex slave. What's more, Muhammad had a special place in his heart for Jews. He said, "Whoever of the Jews falls into your hands, kill him. And the day of judgment will not be established until you fight with the Jews. And the stone behind which a Jew will be hiding will say, 'O Muslim, there is a Jew hiding behind me, so kill him.'" But Muhammad's savagery is not limited to Jews. Said the Ayatollah Khomeini, the founder of today's Iran, Muslims have no alternative to an armed holy war against profane governments. Holy war means the conquest of all non-Muslim territories. It will be the duty of every able-bodied adult male to volunteer for this war of conquest, the final aim of which is to put Quranic law in power from one end of the earth to the other. This demand for Islamic holy war and global conquest is written into the Iranian constitution. You'll also find it in the Quran. Israel has to defeat these holy commands. Remember, it's not just Hamas who is driven by Muhammad's words. It's Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the entire Iranian army, and at least a dozen more Islamist groups around the world. It is a small but significant portion of the world's 1.9 billion Muslims. And it's Iran itself, which can build nuclear weapons within 12 days. So Israel has mobilized 360,000 troops. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called for the utter destruction of Hamas war-making capabilities. To accomplish that goal, Israeli planes have bombed over 2,000 Gazan buildings used by Hamas. But when you see the destruction Israel has wrought in Gaza, remember something crucial. Hamas uses civilians as human shields. It places its military operations, its rockets, and its ammunition in hospitals, schools, mosques, and apartment buildings. It knows that the more civilians killed by Israel's bombs, the more the world will turn on Israel. And in Hamas' eyes, there's another plus. Every civilian who dies in a war with the unbelievers is a martyr and goes directly to paradise. So for Hamas, the killing of Gaza's civilians is a win-win deal. This is Howard Bloom, speaking to you from the future. It's your job and my job to make.